en la mañana, ayer en la mañana, corté.
Something happened here, but it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. It's time to stop, children, watch that sound. Everybody look what's going down.
Porque quieren hacer mucho jugo de limón para los danzantes, que se cansan mucho. Ahora yo estoy cansado. Ah, mira, se sirve comida. Tengo hambre.
I want to introduce my co-MC, Yolanda Perez, although kiddingly we used to call her Yolanda Perez. I've known Yolanda since she was about 13 years old, and she was already involved to a great degree as a little girl with the United Farm Workers Organizing Committee back then.
For one particular reason, and that is to support the film that hopefully will get made with your support and so many others, called IMPACTO. So that's why we're here today. So many of you have played a role as an IMPACTO citizen of the Chicano days here in Silicon Valley and throughout the state and throughout the United States. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. This man to my left, he's a legend in his own time. He's a 3-time Emmy Award winner. As a matter of fact, he's the first Chicano Emmy Award winner in the U.S. history. And abrazos and books. We hope that you all get out there and support it. I think he hosted every August, ¿no? Yeah, every August. Rigo has donated through that organization over $600,000 in the last 22 years in scholarship. Not just to Chicano students, but a mixed across the board. Doesn't matter.
The extremely dedicated reached that lofty place. As a child, as a farm worker, his dreams, his aspirations, his goal was to reach the pinnacles of theater. And unfolding before us and before him was to be an opportunity that was tailor-made for a young man who was not only a future director, a future producer, but someone who wanted to do that coupled with changing the lives of those who are less fortunate than we are. And thus, Luis Valdez started Teatro Campesino.
Practically raised here all my life. Even though I was born in Delano, I consider this to be a forgotten piece of California history that has to be remembered and has to be preserved for future generations. I see many familiar faces here. I'm very happy, overjoyed really to see so many of you. Obviously the clock continues to tick these days. Because I remember in my earliest memories of this place, I was born in Delano. I was born in a labor camp. They're on Ellington Street. Actually, it's where Highway 99 is. You know, they rammed through there, man, in the 50s and wiped out the little labor camp that was there where I was born. Right on Ellington, about Ellington and 8th. And I had my mom and that was my grandmother's shack, actually. That's where I was born. And my mom took me there when I was about 5 or 6. And the place was abandoned. It was about to be torn down. And she took me into this little cabin. And there was an old bedstead, you know, an iron, with a mattress, just a spring, no mattress. And she said, aquí naciste. This is where you were born. And I said, que gacho. But no, actually, I never forgot it. She wanted me to see where I was born. I was born in that little 2-room shack, you know. And across the street, my grandmother had a sister, and her daughter had actually commandeered 2 little cabins right there in Delano. And that was a big deal in those days. She'd actually bought property. And in 1941, the year after I was born, this family arrived from Arizona, and they needed a place to stay, so my tia rented one of the shacks. And the name of the family was Chavez. And there were two teenagers. One was Richard and the other was Cici. And they put the electrical wires, you know, in the house, and they were pretty adept. And of course, you know, the world has come to know them very differently. Cici actually was a pachuco with my cousin. They're in Delano with my cousin Billy. I dedicated Zoot Suit to Billy. He didn't survive past 1955. He died of a violent pachuco death in Phoenix, 17 knife wounds to the chest. But his running partner, Cici, did survive, went to the Navy and came back. And he went to the Delano Theater, which was segregated in those days. You know, they used to separate the Mexican under there. After the Loma Prieta quake, they discovered there was a cell down there. So I went down there and took video of the cell where he had been held. And then they hanged him in the backyard, within sight of the adobe where his father had been born on Market Street. Okay? And he was born in 1835. So his family goes way back. His father, his grandfather rather, his namesake, Jose Tiburcio Vázquez, was one of the founders of San Francisco. He came with the Dianza expedition. And he was the alcalde of San Jose, the sheriff mayor of San Jose for a while. This is why the adobe was on Market Street. You know, and so the Peralta is the only thing that remains here. But I mean, it's part of a history that cannot and must not be forgotten, okay? San Jose was always a hot little town, man. I've discovered they used to have pachangas, you know, and fandangos here a lot, you know? And because it was in the middle of an agricultural region, and so it fed the state, you know, it fed Mission Santa Clara, and it fed whatever communities were here, you know, all the way up to Monterrey. Monterrey was the educational center until Santa Clara University developed, you know, it was the first major university in the state. So the thing is that, you know, there's a lot of rich history here that our kids need to know. And there hasn't been enough documentation of that. But at the very least, what we can do is document our own lifetimes and document the Chicano movement. Because this was a watershed moment in American history. You know, if there's a biological clock ticking that we can do nothing about, Cesar used to say, hay más tiempo que vida. Hay más tiempo que vida. And he knew he wasn't going to be outlasted. He knew that the movement had to go beyond his life. He used to talk about that. And of course it has. And I think he would be very gratified to see where it has gone, you know, that it's still going. And the thing is that we will be gratified to see that it's still going. But we gotta be able to document it so that the young people, you know who they are. Because it's so easy to forget, a lot of distractions. So you need film, you need photographs. I've done that just in search. You know, one fact that I've been doing, I'm writing a new play, by the way, it's called Valley of the Heart. A little publicity here. It's my new play. It takes place in 1941 and to 1945. It starts here in Cupertino. It's a story of one of my childhood friends who was half Japanese American and half Chicano. And guess what happened to him, you know? And he was born in a concentration camp. But the thing is, I met him after the war, and I always felt, man, your mother's kind of strange. She's beautiful, but she's different. ¿Qué pasó, you know? Well, she was Japanese American. She was Middle East. Our continental movement for the liberation of America. Okay, it's not just the United States. It's the whole continent. People have got to realize Latin America is not the United States' backyard. And so, even though there's a lot of fear and a lot of resistance to the idea that Latinos are integrating themselves as Americans into the American way of life and changing really attitudes, even so, there's a sense of historical inevitability about who we are. And you know, yes, manifest destiny, absolutely, but it moves in two directions. Not just east to west. It's also south to north and north to south. Okay, es una cruz, if you will, es una cruz. And again, the Chicano movement was a register of that, okay? It was not just something that appeared and went. People say, well, I don't know about Chicano, what's Chicano, you know? No. The Chicano thing was a vital thing because it was part of the civil rights movement, attached to the African-American movement, the Native American movement, to the women's movement, to the gay movement, to all the movements that have ever been, but also to the labor movement. That was really essential. You know, I worked in the canneries here back. Right after high school, I was trying to work at Richmond Chase, Valley of the Heart's Delight. And I don't know, some of you did. I was 6 years there, man, you know? And you know, I'd worked in the fields all my life, so I didn't know about breaks, I didn't know about unions. And so the thing is that they put me on a litter. You know what, those machines that had the lids? You know, it was boring because all you had to do was just put the lid in, kind of monotonous, you know? And so I'm sitting there trying to keep the lid on the machine, and this guy comes and taps me, and I can't hear him. And I said, "What?" I said, "No, I'm not leaving my job, man. This is my job." And he whispered, actually he yelled in my ear. He said, "Take your break. It's time for your break." And I said, "What's a break?" The packing house, Allied Workers of America, had fought a bitter fight here in this valley to try to keep the Yucapawa vital here. But the Teamsters came in, they signed sweetheart contracts, and wiped out the Yucapawa and Luisa Moreno, you know, one of our heroines, with Emma Temayuca. You know, if you know your labor history, you understand that our history goes way back, and that needs to be documented too. But good. It's good that we're beginning with our own, that we know the faces. The faces are still here. So Adrian and Mario, I salute you. I support you in every way to go ahead and record the living history that lives in the faces and voices of these people that were actually, some of you, many of you, were participants in our movement for liberation, to liberate America from itself, to liberate the continent. And we have to continue to pass this torch to the next generation. And the way to do that is to have just a hell of a film, just an impactful film that shows the meaning of San Jose. You know how this place has always been a flamethrower here. That San Jose has always been a center of labor agitation and social consciousness from its very beginnings, since it started as a little town. And so let me urge you then to give what you can to this film. If we don't pay for it, it won't happen. You know, that's the Teatro Campesino started without a cent, because we had to support it. We had to create it on our own. And so let's make this movie happen, because it's for the good of our kids and our grandkids and all Americans yet to come, that they can see their faces in our mirror as we see our faces in their mirrors. Okay? Adelante, raza. ¡Que viva la causa!
Muchas gracias, Luis. Un millón de gracias.
¡Que viva Luis Valdez!